Hello and welcome to the Humble Ego podcast, a space where I hope we can have truthful conversations about the uncomfortable, hard and rewarding parts of being a creative. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joy, and through conversations with the creators I admire, I want to find out how we can be balanced, productive and true to our authentic selves whilst putting our work out into the world. I fucked up that intro, but the truth is I've done it so many times now that we're just going to let it slide. We're going to leave in that because I cannot bear trying to do that intro again. So guys, today I have a really exciting guest. She is a counselor, a psychotherapist, someone I really admire and have learned so much from. And she also happens to be my mother. Today we have Tamar Ben Hur in the studio. Guys, this feels so weird because obviously this is my mom and we've never done this before. And there's something about hearing ourselves in the mic right now.
Yeah.
That makes me feel like we're doing karaoke.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like it though?
Yeah, I mean it's exciting. It's a lot.
Yeah. We've been thinking about doing this for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to do my podcast for a really long time. And it's just taken a while, but we're starting.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that it might take some mistakes and
getting used to.
Yeah, little hiccups and getting used to along the way. But we just want to talk to you guys. We want to start. We want to just dive right into it. Mm-hmm. So I guess I really just wanted to start with, I mean, we've done videos on my YouTube channel before, where you answered like questions about love and breakups and just answered a lot of questions that my viewers had about just everything to do with relationships. And so we've done that, but I never really had a chance to give you a little bit of a time to kind of talk about your story, how you got to where you are, the lessons you learned along the way. And so I thought, let's just start with you telling me a little bit about your story. I mean, obviously as my mom, I do know some, but I feel like I've never actually asked you, okay, tell me a little bit about you. How did you get to where you are and who you are now? So
it's such a big question, you know, especially this year I'm turning 50 and it's like, oh, where do I start? You know,
yeah.
I was born in, but I guess, yeah, you know, I was born in Jerusalem and I think living now in Australia, that's probably a long way to go. And as born, my parents both are not Israeli originally. And my mother's Danish and my father is American. And they met in Israel and fell in love. And not too long after I was born. And that's why I grew up in Israel. I think it's interesting, but once I realized that the fact that I was born, and 3 weeks after I was born, the Yom Kippur War broke out. And you know, learning afterwards more and more about our nervous system and trauma and understanding, you know, that these things do actually affect who you are, even if you are a little baby and don't really know how to understand what you're feeling. So I guess that's, you know, the very beginning. And fast forward, is always drawn to the arts, to drama especially, and ended up going to the Jerusalem Art School. I was the fifth year of the school, so it was a really new school, and it had a very dynamic and progressive approach. And those years were exciting, but they were also very challenging. Thinking of myself as a young woman, hormones, adolescence, the complexity of Jerusalem, really navigating the streets and the different dimensions that place actually has. I think by then I really wasn't aware of the fact that I knew how to speak so many languages, even though it was almost vibrationally, walking around the street, having a bit of an armor. I think many people that grow up in big cities know how to do that. It's like I would, go in buses and was very independent from a very young age. So those were kind of the adolescence years. And what normally happens in Israel is that when you're 18, you're drafted to the army, whether you're a boy or a girl. But that was something that I didn't do. At the time, I had a boyfriend, and we decided to get married. And that was the two reasons for a girl not to go into the army was either you were married or you were...
Like something with your health or something is
something with your health, yes, or if you're religious.
Right. Oh, so religious women don't go to the army.
Exactly.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yes. Also, religious men
wow.
Can choose not to go to the army.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah. And so that led me to doing something very different than what was expected or what I even expected
of yourself,
of myself. And at the time, I went with my boyfriend to LA. We were there for a while. And that relationship didn't end up continuing. But I think what happened there was that on the one hand, there was the challenge of not confirming and doing what everybody else does. But on the other hand, there was this realization that life continues even if you don't do what everybody else does.
Yeah.
And that you do actually have the ability to choose to do different. And a couple of years later, I met, my partner till this day.
My dad.
Your beautiful dad.
Yeah.
And we were together for 7 years before you came. You were our firstborn. And when I was, the next big thing for me was actually your birth. And I think I didn't actually, I was able to challenge giving birth in a different way than what would normally be expected, and I ended up deciding to do a home birth.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling that it has to happen that way, but I really realized that I would prefer that way for many reasons. And if need be, I'm happy to go to the hospital and really, really appreciative to have medical support if needed. But if it could be avoided, I preferred that. Yes. And
like, for those of you who don't know, at the time, it was very kind of taboo and new.
It was so taboo. Birth. It was actually illegal.
Wow.
Yeah. It was very, and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my own mom because I didn't want anyone to just have fear-based thoughts and
put that into your brain as well.
Put it into my brain as well.
Yeah.
I think I also had the naive of being very young and knowing
I can do it. Yeah.
I can do it, and But I also what ended up happening, thankfully, was that your birth was a very, very beautiful and empowering experience. And I think it really put me with my right foot forward into becoming a mother.
Yeah.
And that was the next journey for me, is really stepping into that role. And I think, that was my highest priority.
Yeah.
And I kept on questioning everything that's so-called a given and really wanting to choose the best for my needs and what I believed would be the best for the two of you. So life led us, mysteriously to Australia.
Yeah.
Initially just for traveling. And now we're 20 years after.
Yeah.
So a lot has happened in those 20 years, a lot of growth and a lot of life. But that's basically, I guess, the story in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's amazing. Honestly, hearing it in that way is just giving me so much perspective about who you are, and like the main theme that I really took away from that, which I guess I knew deep down, but really like came to me while we were talking, is that really from like your first days and like the way you lived your life, you really kind of took steps out of the box that was given to you about what you should and should not do, and you really just like lived your life in the way that you felt called to. And I think looking back at the way I was raised by you and Dad, because Dad's very similar in that way, you both really carved your own paths and really like followed your hearts, even though maybe that was taboo and not right at the time. I think me and Eden have really been raised in a way to really trust that and just have that freedom mentality of like, you get to choose and create the path you want to live. And I think it's so amazing to grow up with that, because it really has always put this like idea in my head that I think I take for granted sometimes, where I'm like, you know what, if I really want something, I can do it. Like, and that's also coming from a very privileged position, obviously, and I don't want to not acknowledge that, but I think it is also a mentality that even some of the most privileged people can get stuck into. This is what is expected of me and what I need to do, rather than what do I want to do and what do I feel called to explore. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, like my parents, especially, like, you know, we moved to Australia when I was 4, like you said, and throughout that whole time you guys had so many businesses, you were trying out so many things and doing so much, and from such a young age I was just seeing how you can take life into your own hands and be your own boss and build your own things. And okay, you need to do this, okay, how do we do, like, and I think that's honestly where I learned so many of the skills to start my own business and put myself out there on the internet and do YouTube, and now doing this podcast. Like, yeah, I think it's such an important lesson to have that reminder of like, you know, we are all dealt different cards, and I am, again, in a very privileged position, but also just being able to sometimes look at your life and be like, okay, where am I stopping myself from believing I can't do something, or that it needs to be a certain way, and it actually be a different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a continuous process, you know, it's continuously, you need to choose that over and over again. Yeah. And I really think the way the world is moving, we can see that when we look into the future, that innovative, creative, passion-driven way of moving through life is really the only thing that ends up being sustainable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we burn out, and we can't actually maintain balance and mental health if we conform to an idea, you know, that the system actually has our best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Many times we need to be able to create our own systems.
Yeah.
And invite other people into that.
Yeah.
And be very flexible with that, because what we lose is the illusion that we're safe. We lose the illusion that there are levels that we just need to get to those marks, and we'll feel accomplished. In a way, we're facing the truth, and the truth is that we need to create our relationship with life and how life unfolds from a different place, not from the outside perspective, but more from an internal one. Yeah. And it's hard. It's so hard. Very hard.
It's so hard. One of the things I really wanted to talk to you about in this podcast is just the story of you meeting my dad. Because you guys have been married for how long now?
30 years almost.
Married for 30 years or been together for 30 years?
Been together for 30 years.
Yeah.
31 years.
Yeah. So you met my dad, Ami, when you were 19.
Yeah.
And I have always had, I guess a lot of people could probably relate to this. It's like, you know, if you have parents that are still together and kind of reflect what a relationship should be like, which is honestly very rare. I feel very lucky that I did grow up in a family where my parents, you and dad, have been such amazing role models for what a healthy relationship looks like. But it definitely, knowing that you guys met young and putting you guys on a pedestal at such a young age of this is love and this is what I want, has definitely, I remember getting to 19 and being like, holy shit.
I remember getting to 19 and freaking out that you're about to get married.
Yeah, honestly, I had a boyfriend when I was 19 and mom freaked out. Like, we had a full moment and I was like, what's going on? Like, I've just met this guy. And you were just like, oh, but you're 19 and you're going to get married. And I was like, no. But at the same time, I did have this pressure on myself from such a young age that I would find my dream guy, and I don't know, that it would just all fall into place and be easy. And it was really interesting as I got older and talked to you, not to put you on blast, but you really opened up about, you know, like the beginning of your relationship with my dad, although you guys love each other and it's amazing, wasn't as simple and perfect at the beginning either. And I think it's so normal and so human to put our parents and the people we see that are representing love on a pedestal, but there was something so humbling about you opening up and being like, Joy, that's not true. Like, it wasn't always easy, and relationships are work and hard, and I've always really appreciated that from you. And I think that's why we have such an open and honest relationship, is because in that regard, but in all regards, you have always been so open with me and shown me all the sides of you. And so yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, meeting your partner that young, because you know you're a couple therapist, you can look at relationships from such a wide lens now. Like, how do you think that's impacted you and your career and what you're interested in?
Profoundly. I think firstly, I think as a therapist you really need to ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? And it's so interesting that I ended up specializing in couple therapy and that I love it so much. And I think there are two, on a personal level, two main reasons. One was that I was doing so much work on my own relationship, and I basically went out there looking for answers, firstly for myself, the big answers, you know, the answer to, can we love what we already have? Can we sustain love and passion in a long-term relationship?
Yeah.
And can we also really actualize as individuals while being in a long-term relationship? Because I think culturally, many times we can easily believe that it's one or the other. Either I focus on myself, or I focus on the relationship. And how can I actually do both? I think that was really the question that I was very curious about. And on a deeper level, I even think that going towards couple therapy was planted even earlier as a little girl, where seeing the conflict, the difficulties between my parents, and really, really trying so hard to mend and be the peacemaker and make sense of it and basically save them. So relationships are work, that's true, but I think even more than that, I think love is a choice.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment where I realized that I was in love with Abba. And
I'm like getting teary for no reason.
I remember it so clearly because it was like a physical feeling in my body. I was walking down street, downtown, and the kind of winter sun was just making everything look glowing. Everything was looking sparkly, and I just had that, spring in my step. And I remember having the thought, you're probably in love. And so, yes, there was that love, but it wasn't necessarily, that first sight kind of fantasy love where you see someone and that's it, that you're going to be with them for the rest of your life. It was more of a revelation. And after that, it was a sense of homecoming. It was a sense of, we don't even need to get married because we're already married. It was a sense of there's something so deep that unites us and that we can grow together. I think that was the strongest feeling for me was there is something in the core that I know is going to be there because I know that we're both going to change. We're not going to stay who we are. And that's the part that I trust, and that's the part that I am in love with.
Yeah.
And it's a very big journey. It's a very big journey. It is, like you were talking about creativity, it's rewarding and it's also has its challenges.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not a one size fits all, but I definitely think that relationships are a worthy cause. If that's where you feel to put your energy, like anything else. It is a choice. And
I think such a good point of what you said there is, like how you linked it back to creativity. And it's like really for me why I believe we are all creatives is because we do have the power to create our own lives. Do you know what I mean? Everybody in their own ways, but we do have these moments where we do have a choice of like, and just like taking that, like I am creating my own life and it is a choice. Yeah, you fall in love with people, but it is a choice. Do I commit? Do I feel into this? Do I step into this? Do I put in the work throughout the years? Because, like you said, it's like there is a falling, but there is also a choice there where it's like...
And the choice afterwards becomes daily.
Yeah, every day you make that choice.
Every day you make that choice. Yes.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's so beautiful and definitely not a message that is shared very much. And I think there is this, I don't know, like expectation put on specifically young girls, I think, at a young age to have this falling in love. It's perfect from the beginning. And as long as the guy doesn't do anything wrong, it's going to be perfect. And it's like not giving a whole perspective and the complexities of a relationship, because a relationship is really two people choosing and putting in the work. And yes, there's love and things come easy. And there is about something about finding that person that in a way is your soulmate. But yeah, there is also that there's so many layers. And like you said, it's like, can you grow with that person? Like we evolve so much, and there's some people that are maybe meant to be with us and then we're meant to say like goodbye and you've outgrown each other. But there's also those people that you are able to grow with. And I think, it's been beautiful as your daughter, even seeing the stages of our family and how we've evolved and how you and dad have changed. Like,
yes. And I also think that, I forgot what I was going to say. It's going to come back.
I know. I feel like we can get into these conversations so deeply that it just takes us to another realm.
I just remembered because this is how we talk, you know. And
this is. I feel like I almost am forgetting where.
Like it's not. It's like we just get in that zone. But I do think because I think your perspective it just brings up like really important things in the way I see things, and it really inspires me. So I love our conversations. but that sense, oh, did it go again? Oh yeah, that, you know, that we're looking for the perfect person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest lie.
It's such a lie. And I believe it every single fucking day.
Yeah, that we look for, and it's like as if we're perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
As if
Someone's
we're perfect.
waiting to find the perfect me.
And I think the truth about relationships is that we find the person, it's actually the opposite, with the exact weakness that will assure our anxiety about them leaving us.
Wow.
And that is actually the person that we can end up choosing to love. And the trick is not to forget that, because, you know, if we bring it, and I'm kind of maybe going a bit too fast, but bring it whole circle to humble ego, you know, that is the humbleness in the relationship.
Yeah, fully.
So it's really, actually, it's the part of the other that I feel creates that emotional safety for me.
Yeah.
That allows me to love them and never to betray that.
Mm-hmm.
Never to, you know, be condescending on that or hurt that.
Yeah.
That part, that's the most sacred. That's kind of the inner of the inner of the inner, the softest tissue.
Completely. As you were saying that as well, it was like really hitting me, the humble ego in relationships and how big that is. And that's why I also wanted to talk to you. But like, you know, as you said that, I was like, wow, we do have such an ego in kind of, expecting to find this perfect match, and you're going to be like, because I even put this expectation on myself of like, oh, I'll only meet the person that I want to meet when I'm perfect, when I'm in this spot in my life where I'm confident and great and I got my career in check and I look beautiful and I this and that, and then I'll find that person.
And what did I say about that?
It's just like
what happens, you know, the day after?
Exactly.
What happens when you have a breakdown? What happens when you're not the glorious self?
Exactly. And so it's like, it's so true how we let the ego tell us this story. And it's almost like we're like, oh, but I want to get to a place where I feel good in myself. But it's like also just then constantly putting you down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like you're not enough the
you're
way
not
you
enough
are.
the way you are. And then you can't really attract the right relationship in that place. So yeah, that's a thought I had. And another thought is like, in relationships also, is the ego needed? That's a question of like, do you need to have maybe ego isn't the right word in the way people understand it, but the self-worth and self-love to know what you deserve, because that is such a cycle in relationships where people do not feel worthy for the love they want to attract, and then settle for relationships that are toxic, unfulfilling, and ultimately damaging. And so I wanted to know there, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. I think, you know, it's like ego has been defined in many different modalities and theories in very different ways. So we can, you know, there's the kind of popular way of seeing ego, but there's also the deeper way of seeing ego, and that's also different. It's different in different modalities. But I think the ego, the way I understand it, is really that sense of self.
Yeah.
And that connection to my needs, to my aspirations, to my vitality, and that drive to individuate and to find my place in the world, to meet the world from that differentiated place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a very, very important part in order to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
So many relationships end up being really enmeshed because people find so much comfort in, you know, merging together, but then they lose themselves within the relationship. And long term, that has its own cost.
Yeah.
So I think the same way as you've identified so beautifully for an artist or a creative person, the need to find that balance between having an ego, having that strong sense of self and differentiation, and the humbleness, that place that can actually really merge with someone else and actually be in a place of what for the ego may seem like a compromise, but it is actually a place of union, and melding. That really are two aspects of our human needs, and the dance throughout life is really finding the balance between them. And I think that's very true for relationships as well.
Completely. I guess to wrap this all up, I kind of want to ask you, for my audience, as a couple therapist, and talking into the ego and the humble and finding that, do you have any piece of advice that, I mean, obviously there's so much advice in so many areas, but what is something that you could let the audience take away from this episode that you feel, could be of value, or something that maybe your 19-year-old self, before you met my dad and before you met your partner, could have benefited from hearing?
I think, it's a little bit coming from the perspective of the elder, maybe.
Yeah, that's good. We're ready. Give us the knowledge.
And it's really that not everything has to happen simultaneously all the time. There are times in your life where you're gonna be more in the humble, merging, devotional, amorphic, not knowing, not striving necessarily. There are going to be times like that. And there are going to be times where you're going to need to kind of gather that energy and say, no, I need to put myself first now. And I need to actually trust that everything will survive, even if I don't take care of everyone around me. And really trusting that life will give us an opportunity for everything. And we can have everything, just sometimes not at the same time.
You've said that to me before, and I come back to it all the time, because it is easy to get into this state of you want all areas to be at a 10 out of 10, but it's not always realistic, and you can have it all.
Exactly.
But there's definitely times, especially in relationships, where even in my own, I felt there's times where you're more in love and connected and in the relationship, and there's times where you maybe need to focus more on yourselves and different areas, and there's an ebbs and flows, and that's completely normal.
And everything means that you're when you're here, you're not there, and when you're there, you're not here. And we just have to create that plasticity and move between the different aspects of ourselves, and make sure that the grounds are always wet on both. So you keep on nurturing both. So even if you're in a time in your life where you're very, busy in your own self and striving in your career, and the sense of self is more important, you nurture that place of relationship and humbleness, and allow yourself to also meet that place within yourself. Don't always shut it down. Stay in touch. And the other way around, when you're in times of your life when you're more going inwards and you're less in the striving, to still maintain touch with the parts of yourself that are creative and that want to create in the world and participate.
Beautiful. And as a little rapid fire question for the end, right now in your life, do you feel like you need to work on your humility more, or on maybe your ego and having that a bit more?
I really feel that now I need to work on my ego. I think I've done 20 years of parenting. I've worked throughout that time and was also engaged in other things. But this is really the first time in my life where I feel I just need to be able to focus on that creative sense of self that wants to contribute to the world.
Oh, yeah. And that you are incredible and whole, even not as just a mother, because I feel like so many female fall into that. That's where they find their worth. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's a very painful place to be, even though you're doing the most important job in the world. But life is long, and there are other sides.
You're
exactly.
Yeah. I'm so excited to see all the amazing things you do, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you for being the best mom, and
I love you so much.
I love you too so much, and I'm so grateful that we can have these conversations and share it with more people, and I hope you guys enjoyed and got something from it. And if you want to see more of Mum, we will definitely do more episodes together. I mean, we definitely will, even if you don't want it. But let us know if you do, and subscribe to the Humble Ego podcast on YouTube, find the Instagram. I'm trying to get better at the ego side of promoting myself. And so if you guys want to leave a review,
that would be very helpful.
That would be helpful and amazing. So thanks for being a part of the Humble Ego Collective, and I'll see you guys all very soon. Bye.